Pet Coke, Wine News Director General of Foreign Trade DGFT under Ministry of Commerce and Industry, has laid out a procedure for allocation of quota for import of calcined pet coke (CPC) for aluminium industry and raw pet coke for CPC manufacturing industry for financial year 20 and 21. Background: in 2017, Environment Pollution and Control Authority had recommended that the distribution, sale, and use of furnace oil and pet coke be strictly banned in National Capital Region because of high sulfur content. Following this, Supreme Court banned the use of pet coke in New Delhi and neighboring states and Haryana and Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan after the air pollution level of the national capital reached hazardous level. In 2018, pet coke was banned for its use as nationwide following the Supreme Court judgment in MC Mehta and Union of India case. Its import was allowed only in cement, lime kiln, and chemical dyed and gasification industries when used as a feedstock or in the manufacturing process. However, later government permitted the import of certain quality of pet coke used for fuel purposes for anode making by aluminium industry. But its import ban, India was the world's largest consumer of pet coke. Presently, Supreme Court has fixed the import limit of raw petroleum coke at zero point 0.5 metric ton per annum and calcined petroleum coke at 1.4 mt per annum metric ton per annum. What about pet coke? So pet coke is a byproduct, that is carbonaceous solid of oil refinery process, mainly the bottom of the barrel. It is categorized as a high grade fuel with high calorific value, more than 8,000 kilocalorie per kg, but having low ash content and low volatile matter but high sulfur content up to 7%. Types: it is in raw form, it is called as the green coke or the green petroleum coke or raw pet coke. It comes from the several sources, all from the petrol refinery industry. About 80% of world pet coke production is fuel grade pet coke, that is green coke used for electricity generation in the cement kilns. Calcined pet coke. It is obtained by processing the raw pet coke by calcining in the rotary kiln that removes residual volatile hydrocarbons. Calcined pet coke has following industrial uses. First, smelting of aluminium, and is the only commercial viable method to do so. Production of titanium oxide as a partial replacement for coal as a feedstock in blast furnaces for making steel from iron ore, brick and glass manufacturing, production of ammonia and urea ammonium nitrate. Um, Environmental impacts of pet coke. First, releases greenhouse gases. Due to its high carbon content, it releases up to 10% more than CO2 than normal coal, which make pet coke a huge contributor of GHG. High sulfur content. Low grade pet coke contains high amounts of sulfur, which results in the release of sulfur oxides during combustion. SOx is an acid irritant, cause air pollution and even acid rain. Heavy metals. Pet coke also contains heavy metals such as nickel and vanadium, which can deteriorate environment quality of environment and cause toxicity. Particulate matter. Significant quality of particulate matter from pet coke storage handling operations led to inflammation in lungs, especially in urban and industrial areas. Conclusion: along with improving the statistical data on pet coke, real-time monitoring focuses should be also on improving the pricing of coal to reduce the use of pet coke as an alternative. The promotion of cleaner technologies such as fluidized bed boilers and emissions treatment system is another way to reduce the sulfur dioxide emissions from the petcoke combustion. Adding excess hydrogen to convert the otherwise solid oil residue to more diesel, asphalt wax, and other fuel oils. Through a process called residue fuel hydrogenation, it is an attractive option for the new refineries. So here's something to read as well. Issues in dealing with pet coke. Absence of data about pet coke production and consumption leads to regulation challenges. Due to this excess seas left on the coal, market distortion has occurred in favor of pet coke. It is preferred raw material choice for many industries that it is cheaper than coal and it is high calorific value. Oil refineries in USA that are unable to sell pet coke, dirty fuel waste product, at home export vast quantity of it to India instead. This has led India to being treated like a dumping ground for waste generated by the others. Then uranium contamination, high on uranium. So A new study conducted by University of Manchester, UK, and Mahavir Cancer Institute and Research Centre, Pulwari Sharif in Patna, has found the uranium contamination in the groundwater in 10 districts of Bihar. More about the news. This is the first time uranium content has been detected in the groundwater of Bihar. Uranium concentrations are elevated mostly in the northwest and southeast band along to east of Gandak River and running south of Ganga River towards Jharkhand. The maximum uranium content was in Sulphur Sufol district of Bihar, 80 microgram of uranium per liter of water. Uranium contamination in India. The permissible limit according to World Health Organization is 30 microgram per liter. However, unlike the limits of arsenic and other toxic and heavy materials specified under Bureau of Indian Standards of Drinking Water Specification, there is no limit maintained for uranium. And earlier, a report brought by Central Groundwater Board noted that widespread uranium contamination in groundwater from aquifers across 16 states of India, including Punjab, Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, and Haryana, etc. Uranium can cause serious ailments such as if uranium laced water more than permissible limit is consumed for long, it can cause thyroid cancer, blood cancer, depression, and other serious ailments. Some studies have also linked the excessive ingestion of uranium to chronic kidney disease. The source of uranium is naturally occurring, but human activities like overpumping enhance uranium problem. In many parts of India, aquifers are composed of sediments carried down from the Himalayas by streams or from the uranium rich granite rocks. Overuse of these aquifers for human use reduces the water level and create oxidizing conditions which enhance the uranium's solubility in water. Interaction of the uranium with other chemicals in the groundwater, such as bicarbonate, can further enhance its solubility. Similarly, nitrate pollution due to overuse of nitrogenous fertilizers also thought to enhance uranium mobilization. Now, what is the way forward? Acute treatment of radioactive contamination in groundwater, such as absorption of ion exchange. The water soluble contaminants are captured by sorption into a solid support that can be natural or synthetic material. Precipitation. This is mostly practiced above ground and involves additional of alkali to rise the pH of precipitate, the oxidize or hydroxide. Then second is remedial strategies based on in-suit chemical stabilization such as redox technologies. These technologies attempt to manipulate oxidation and reduction conditions of the subsurface to reduce uranium to uranous uranium 4 forms. Flushing technologies. This group of remediation technologies uses a variety of leaching solutions to dissolve the solid phase uranium and hydraulic extraction techniques to remove the solubilized uranium. The central and state government should collaborate with technical institutions such as Baba Atomic Research Center (BARC) to comprehensively address the issue of radioactive contamination. So this is a map where you can see the studies in 2018 have found the uranium traces in the groundwater of 79 districts of the state. So Punjab and Haryana, Punjab and Rajasthan have a huge amount of states where we found the uranium contamination in the groundwater. After that, Jharkhand, Gujarat, Karnataka, Haryana are also rich in that thing, and now Bihar is the newly added. Moving forward, we are on Arctic zone hole, a rare hole that had opened up in the ozone zone above the Arctic get closed recently. So scientists using the data from the Copernicus Sentinel 5P satellite have noticed a strong reduction of ozone concentrations over Arctic. An analysis of our satellite solution shows that ozone level reached their lowest point in 12th March at 205 Dobson units. In comparison, the lowest March ozone value observed in Arctic is usually around 240 Dobson units. Rare hole covered an area about 3 times of the ground of Greenland, which such low levels are rare. They are not unprecedented. Similarly, low oxygen levels occurred in the upper atmosphere or stratosphere in 1997 and 2011. Later on, polar vortex split due to rising temperature with the onset of summer, allowing ozone-rich air into the Arctic led to the healing of the ozone hole. Why did Arctic ozone hole form this year? A major reason for 2020 Arctic ozone hole is that polar vortex during winter was incredibly strong and persistent this year. The polar vortex is large area of low pressure and cold air surrounding both of the earth poles. It always exists near the poles but weakens in summer and strengthens in winters. The term vortex refer to the counter-clockwise flow of air that keeps the colder air near the poles. So this lead to the fresh Arctic air staying mostly clogged in the Arctic rather than moving around and spilling extreme cold air into the places like US. This stable profoundly the cold air below minus 78 degrees Celsius allowed the lofty clouds to form high up in the atmosphere where ozone lives in the stratosphere. These are called polar stratospheric clouds. So these clouds create an ideal environment for human-made chemical chlorofluorocarbons to react with the sunlight, which then makes chlorine, the chemical that ultimately destroys the ozone. Moreover, this robust polar vortex prevented ozone-rich air from other regions from washing into the Arctic, which kept the ozone levels depleted. Reasons for such unusual strong polar vortex and why it has lasted so long this year is yet to be known. So, in this context, let's know about Dobson unit. Dobson unit is the most common unit for measuring ozone concentration. One Dobson unit is the number of molecules of ozone that would be required to create a layer of pure ozone of 0.01 millimeters thick at the temperature of 0 degrees Celsius and a pressure of 1 atmosphere. Over the Earth's surface, the ozone layer's average thickness is about 300 Dobson units and a layer that is 3 millimeter thick. Another thing to discuss is why Arctic ozone hole is rare compared to the Antarctic ozone hole. While ozone holes developing on the Antarctic every year are common during the southern hemisphere spring, and the conditions needed for such strong ozone depletion are not normally found in northern hemisphere. Arctic stratosphere is usually less isolated than the Antarctic counterpart, but the presence of nearby land masses, mountain ranges disturbs the weather patterns more than in the southern hemisphere. This explains why the polar vortex in the northern hemisphere is usually weaker and perturbed than in the southern hemisphere, and the temperature does not fall so low. Arctic ozone hole is thus unusual is that we only have events like about once per decade. On the contrary, the Antarctic ozone hole is being recorded annually over the last 35 years. NASA researchers prefer the term depletion over the Arctic since that despite the ozone layer record low this year, the ozone loss is much less than the annual ozone hole that occurs over Antarctic in September and October. For comparison, ozone levels over Antarctic typically drop about 120 Dobson units. Then we talk about Petersburg Climate Dialogue. 11th session of Petersburg Climate Dialogue we held via video conference for the first time due to COVID-19 pandemic. About Petersburg Climate Dialogue. It was launched in 2010 by Germany after failed climate negotiation at 2009 Copenhagen summit. It is an informal annual meeting of high-level ministers and representatives of various countries that enables them to have constructive exchange on the issue of international climate actions. The co-chair of Climate Dialogue is country presiding over the next conference of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. UNFCCC highlights on 11th edition of Petersburg Climate Dialogue. This edition saw the participation of around 30 countries along with India. It was co-chaired by Germany, United Kingdom, UK's incoming presidency of 26th Conference of Parties to UNFCCC COP26. Dialogue underlined the following broad themes. First, economic recovery plans post COVID 19 need to be aligned with Paris Agreement and Sustainable Development Goals. Second, stress for multilateralism, international cooperation, and support for developing countries for fulfillment of 100 billion USD climate finance mobilization goal by 2020. Third, development of enhanced nationally determined contributions for long term strategies under the Paris Agreement should not be postponed. Fourth, India stressed the need for having climate technology as open source and at an affordable cost in similar manner as the world is unitedly engaged in finding a vaccine for COVID 19. Then we talk about UNFCCC. Adopted in 1992, UNFCCC Act as an agreement as a framework for international cooperation to combat climate change by limiting average global temperature increases and resulting climate change and coping with impacts. Its secretariat in Bonn, Germany. Conference of Parties (COP) is supreme decision-making body of the convention. All states that are parties to convention are represented at COP. It meets every year unless the parties decides otherwise. COP26. It was scheduled to be held in Glasgow, Scotland in November 2020, now postponed to 2021 due to COVID-19 pandemic. This conference was said to have been the first global stocktake that was outlined in the Paris Agreement. Global stocktake refers to the proposed review of impact of countries' climate change actions. Then we are talking about naming of tropical cyclones. India Meteorological Department released list of 169 new names for tropical cyclones in North Indian Ocean region. Naming of tropical cyclones. Worldwide, there are six regional specialized meteorological centers (RSMC), five regional tropical cyclone warning centers (TCWCs) mandated for issuing the advisories and name of tropical cyclones. India Meteorological Department is one of the six RSMCs, and that is responsible for naming the tropical cyclones developing over the North Indian Ocean, including Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. The new names were contributed by 13 member countries WMO Escape Panel on Tropical Cyclones. The names of cyclones provided by India are Gati, Tez, Murasu, Aag, Vyom, Jhar, Probaho, Neer, Prabhajan, Gurrini, Ambud, Jaldi, Vega. The naming of tropical cyclone over North Indian Oceans commenced from September 2004. Naming of cyclones in North Indian Ocean takes place whenever a tropical storm in Northern Indian Ocean region surpasses a wind speed of 62 km per hour. So, about WMO and ESCAPE panel on tropical cyclones, it is an intergovernmental regional body jointly established by the World Meteorological Organization and United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific, ESCAPE in 1972. It is associated with the Tropical Cyclone Program of WMO that aims at assisting members in monitoring forecasting tropical cyclones to reduce disaster related losses of life and infrastructure. Objective to promote measures to improve tropical cyclones warning system in Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. Dissemination of technical information on tropical cyclones research and forecasting operations. Now, what are the member countries? So, India, Bangladesh, Maldives, Myanmar, Oman, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Europe, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen are the member countries in this group. So, as you can see in the map, there is RSMC New Delhi, RSMC La Reunion, then we have this Indonesian part, then RSMC Tokyo, then RSMC Honolulu, then RSMC Nadi, and then RMMC Miami. After that, we have Antarctic experiences first known heat wave. Therefore, the scientists have recorded Antarctica's first documented heat wave. The heat wave event was occurred in East Antarctica during the 2019-20 Southern Hemisphere summer. Between January 23 and 26, 2020, minimum temperatures was higher than 0 degrees Celsius, while the maximum peaked above 7.5 degree. Heat wave are classified as 3 consecutive days with both extreme and maximum and minimum temperatures. What caused the heat wave? East Antarctica had witnessed an ozone hole in the spring since late 1970s. Ozone depletion and related lack of heating cooling the stratosphere. This cooling increases the north and south temperature gradient between the southern mid-latitudes and Antarctic, which strengthened the stratospheric westerly winds in the southern hemisphere. It promotes a generally more positive state of southern annular mode in summer. This means that the Southern Ocean's westerly winds belt has tended to stay close to Antarctic, creating a seasonal shield, reducing the transfer of warm air from the temperate regions to Antarctica. But during the spring of 2019, a strong warming of the stratosphere over Antarctica significantly reduced the size of the ozone hole. This helped me to support a more negative state of ozone annular mode and weaken the shield. Other factors in late 2019 may have also helped to warm Antarctica. The Indian Ocean dipole was in strong positive state due to the late retreat of Indian monsoon. This meant that water in the Western Indian Ocean was warmer than the normal. Air rising from this and other warm ocean patches in Pacific Ocean provided energy sources that altered the path of weather system and helped to disturb the warmth of stratosphere. Why it is significant? Antarctica may be isolated from the rest of continents by a southern ocean but has worldwide impacts. It drives the global ocean conveyor belt, a constant system of deep ocean circulation which transfers oceanic heat around the planet. Its melting ice sheet adds to global sea level rise based on experiences from previous anomalous hot summers in Antarctica. A multitude of biological impact can be expected to be reported in coming years, illustrating how climate change is impacting even the most remote areas of the planet. Then we are talking about here the southern annular mode SAM, also known as Antarctic Oscillation, refers to the non-seasonal north-south movement of strong westerly winds that blow almost continuously in the mid to high latitude of southern hemisphere. Social issues. Urbanization of pandemic. COVID 19 almost over the entire world is very urban centric. The WHO has identified urbanization as one of the key challenges for public health in 21st century. In recent decades, many emerging infectious diseases have been occurring at a increasing scale and frequency. For example, Ebola virus disease, severe acute respiratory syndrome SARS, avian and pandemic influenza, Middle East respiratory syndrome, and recently emerged COVID 19. With ever larger shift to population to urban areas, with conjunction with the shift to very large percentage of national economies to large urban centers, and the concentration of succession of epidemics and pandemics in the cities has become stronger. The countries such as Spain, Italy, France, UK, Germany, Iran, and US have suffered the highest number of COVID 19 cases, are among very highly urbanized countries. In India, as of 26 April, in general, the most urbanized states are the common top 10 states impacted by corona. These include Maharashtra, Gujarat, Delhi, and Tamil Nadu. The urban nature of pandemic becomes clearer when we consider the mega cities and the large Indian cities. 10 cities of India had over half of the cases. These cities comprise Mumbai, Delhi, Ahmedabad, Indore, Pune, Jaipur, Hyderabad, Chennai, Surat, and Agra. Challenges of managing the growing urbanization of pandemic. Reasons for growing urbanization of pandemic and the challenges associated. High population density and high volume of public transportation. A larger population to be managed, ease of disease spread between the humans in congested areas, difficulties in contact tracing, especially casual contact in the public area, inequalities resulting in poor housing environment that might hinder outbreaks, prevention, and control effects. Closer encounters with wildlife via food market or because of expansion into previously untouched ecosystem. Interface between animals and humans. Areas of poor sanitation with rodents and other animals vectors live domestic and wild animal markets. Animals raised in the backyard farms or industrial agricultural facility in close proximity to humans. Governance by local authorities. Competing interest with finite local budget, insufficient authority to institute response measures promptly, insufficient epidemic preparedness capabilities or capacities at subnational and local level, difficulties in assessing national capacities. Then we talk about heterogeneous subpopulations, a wide range of cultural factor, including mode of social interaction and acceptable control measures. Some subpopulation might be difficult to reach. High connectivity to other urban centers, domestic and international. High likelihood of multiple importation events and risk of rapid export of disease to other parts of the country or to other countries via might lead to restriction on travel and trade. Center of commerce, greater disruption on economic activity, stability and growth, unconventional communication and interaction, multiple information sources leading to misinformation, false information might spread quickly. Post pandemic city planning, with social distancing likely to be the norm over the near future, we need to analyze how a city design impact health, social mobility and disease control, among other things. Basic aspect of city planning is needed to combat the future pandemics as discussed below.